13. Talking to computers. Why the keyboard refused to die. The prediction, what we thought. By the end of the 1990s, many futurists believed the keyboard was living on borrowed time. Speech, they argued, was the most natural human interface. Typing was an awkward compromise, a relic of typewriters and early computing constraints. Once computers could reliably understand spoken language, keyboards would become unnecessary. We would talk to machines the way we talk to people, and they would respond in kind. In this vision, speech input wasn't just an improvement. It was a replacement. Emails would be dictated, commands spoken aloud. Documents composed by voice, hands would be freed, screens would listen. The barrier between human intention and machine execution would dissolve into conversation. Standing in 1999, this felt like a logical endpoint of progress. If machines were becoming smarter, why would we still be pecking at keys? Why this prediction made sense in 1999? To understand why the death of the keyboard seemed imminent, it helps to remember how uncomfortable and artificial computing still felt at the turn of the millennium. In 1999, typing required training and practice. Keyboards were optimized for machines, not people. Computers demanded precise input. Errors were common and unforgiving. At the same time, speech recognition was visibly improving. Early systems could already transcribe dictated text, slowly and imperfectly, but recognizably. Demonstrations were impressive enough to convince observers that the remaining problems were incremental, not fundamental. There was also a strong ergonomic argument. Typing was associated with strain, repetitive motion injuries, and fatigue. Speech felt effortless by comparison. If computers could listen, why wouldn't users prefer to talk? Crucially, this optimism existed before laptops were ubiquitous and long before smartphones. Computing was still largely a stationary activity performed at desks. In that context, speaking to a machine didn't feel socially strange. Offices were private enough, noise was manageable. The idea of dictation fit existing work patterns. The broader emotional climate of the era reinforced this belief. The late 1990s were marked by confidence that technology would smooth away awkward interfaces and make machines feel more human. Talking to computers sounded like progress, not novelty. Who said it, and where? One of the most prominent advocates of this prediction was Ray Kurzweil, who argued in The Age of Spiritual Machines, 1999, that speech recognition would soon reach a level of accuracy sufficient to replace keyboards for most tasks. Kurzweil's confidence rested on exponential improvement. Processing power was increasing rapidly. Algorithms were improving. Datasets were growing. From his perspective, the remaining gap between machine speech recognition and human conversation would close quickly. His credibility mattered. Kurzweil had been right about several earlier technological trends. When he described speech input as the future default, many readers accepted it as a matter of timing rather than possibility. By 1999, the idea that keyboards were temporary felt not fringe but forward-looking. What actually happened 2000 to 2025? Speech recognition improved dramatically. Voice assistants became mainstream. Dictation accuracy increased. People routinely speak to their phones, cars, and smart speakers. Machines can now transcribe speech, answer questions, and follow spoken commands with impressive reliability. And yet, the keyboard did not disappear. In fact, it remains central to how people work. By 2025, most professional writing, coding, detailed editing, and structured communication still happens through keyboards. Even users who rely on voice input for short commands often switch to typing for anything complex. Speech became an addition, not a replacement. Why? Because typing offers control that speech does not. It allows silent work in shared spaces. It supports precision, revision, and structure. It externalizes thought in a way that speaking often does not. For many tasks, typing is not just efficient, it is cognitively supportive. Ironically, as computers became mobile and public, speech input became less practical. Talking to a machine on a train, in an office, or in a cafe introduced social friction that typing avoided. The contexts in which speech made sense narrowed just as devices spread everywhere. The future arrived, but it kept the keyboard. Verdict: status. False. Speech input did not replace the keyboard. Despite massive improvements in speech recognition and widespread adoption of voice interfaces, keyboards remain essential for work, creation, and detailed interaction. The prediction underestimated how deeply typing supports thinking, not just input. Why it played out this way. The core mistake was confusing naturalness with effectiveness. Speech is natural for conversation, but not always for composition. Writing allows pauses, revisions, and spatial organization that spoken language struggles to replicate. For tasks that require precision, structure, or privacy, typing remains superior. There was also a social dimension the prediction overlooked. Public environments penalize speech. Silence is socially neutral. Talking to a machine is still situationally awkward in many contexts. Finally, the prediction underestimated how adaptable humans are to tools they already know. Typing, once learned, becomes invisible. It fades into muscle memory. The pain point futurists wanted to eliminate had already been absorbed. What this prediction teaches us about the future. This case illustrates a subtle forecasting trap, assuming newer interfaces will replace older ones simply because they seem more human. In reality, interfaces persist when they support cognition, not just comfort. Technologies that integrate with how people think tend to endure, even when flashier alternatives exist. The future didn't reject speech, it contextualized it. In 1999, it felt obvious that talking would beat typing. In 2026, we know that progress doesn't always mean replacement. Sometimes it means coexistence. One sentence takeaway. We taught computers to listen, but we kept the keyboard because thinking still works better through keys than through speech.